welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and anybody else who is joining us here this week. This is game week number 6, and the league is finally starting to take a little bit of shape. But first, sadly, we have in the last couple of hours heard the devastating news that Sheffield United star Maddie Cusack has passed away. This is truly heartbreaking news, and I know that I speak for everybody at the Sheffield United way. I know I speak for Jimmy, who's going to be here with me shortly, and I speak for everybody watching this and everybody else in the wider footballing community when I say that my heart goes out to her family, my heart goes out to her friends, and that we're all just really, really thinking of them and wishing them all the best in such a difficult time. Obviously, from there, it's really hard to get into the normal stream, and it's been such a difficult day. But I will now introduce my regular guest and my co-host for this one, Jimmy. How are you doing, Jimmy? Are you okay?
I'm good, thank you, mate. In the circumstances, obviously, mentioning Maddie there, and absolutely echo what you're saying. Rest in peace, Maddie. And it puts into context a little bit what we're doing, doesn't it? In terms of, you know, we're just talking about football and trying to have a laugh, but I think there's things that are much bigger than football, and this is clearly one of them. So hopefully today we can sort of try and ease that a little bit with a little bit of, you know, not so serious football chatty.
Indeed, yes. And I think that's exactly it. It's just trying to find a way you get through it. And like you say, a bit of not so serious football chat. So trying to get back into our normal routine. Last week, I would normally be quite excited about this, but last week I finally got a win in this channel, in this battle against you, Jimmy. I've lost week after week, and finally last week, 13-11. You're still ahead overall. You've got a lead, I think, of 7 points, but I am coming back. And the intention is that I will keep coming back and I will catch you up at some point. But once again, we just can't touch the viewers. Our viewers champion last week, we had a joint leaders, Toby Buckley, and our old favourite who was with us all the way through last season, johnegan.com. They both got 17 points. Just a fantastic week. And how do we catch the viewers, Jimmy? How do we ever beat them?
Well, let's be right. It's like when you're playing dads against lads when you're kids and you're like 6-year-old and you're playing against your dads, and you've absolutely no chance because they've been playing for so long. They might not even be great footballers, but we're playing against how many people? At least,
Hundreds.
what, 500 at least. So I was wondering, would it be fairer? And I'm not going to ask Chaz to do this now, but this is what we potentially should have done, is do the mean score, the average score against everybody, rather than just the top scorers every time getting the points on the board, because we'll never catch them. We have to be elite every week, and although we'll try, it's not going to happen, is it? So
no, we do its best, but I don't think we're elite any week. Never mind every week.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, yeah, apologies. I am losing, so I can only speak for myself. You mentioned her there, though, and it's really important that we do give Shaz a shout out. Once again, thank you massively to Shaz for collecting all of those scores and going through our comments. But thank you even more to Shaz. I think you got one as well, Jimmy. She has made me a custom keyring. And no, you're not going to be able to see it fantastically, but I'll try and put it forward. It's got my name on it. It's got the Sheffield United Way logo on the back. It is fantastic. I really, really appreciate it. And I would just say to anybody out there who's looking for some bespoke jewelry, ornaments, things to put up in your house, please do go and check out Shaz's work because it is just outstanding. I know I'm ordering a really special gift for one of my friends for Christmas. And I'm hoping that she'll be able to make it for me. And if you do want to do that, she's Shazbat Designs on Twitter and shatbatdesigns.co.uk if you want to go and check out her website.
Hugely talented.
So, Jimmy,
go on,
that's a heavy start that we've gone through, but we're here now. Let's get into some of the games that we've got this week. So up first, I don't think there's any Friday night games. I don't think there's any Saturday kickoffs. I think the first set of games are 3 o'clock on a Saturday, and that does not happen very often. And we start with Palace versus Fulham. Now, I have not given anywhere near enough coverage to Palace so far since we started doing this. Every week I come in and I go, quintessential mid-table team. They'll beat the rubbish. They'll lose to the top. And so I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in. I'm going to check some of their stats. I'm going to have a look at it. I'm going to see what's come out. And they are 14th for XG created, 10th for XG conceded. They are the quintessential mid-table team that will beat the teams at the bottom and lose to the teams at the top.
Absolutely right. And Fulham will be very similar, won't they?
Surprisingly. So I thought the same. I thought Fulham and Palace will both be really similar. But Fulham so far this season, they've got the worst XG against in the league and they're 17th for XG created. Obviously, they have got some points on the board, but they were 1-0 wins against Everton and Luton, who I think we can say quite comfortably are two of the worst teams in the league. They are overperforming to have got where they are. And low key, having looked at those stats, I do worry that Fulham might be a team to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it this last week that I was keeping a keen eye on both these teams. Not that I thought they would be directly involved, but I think they have a chance of being pulled in at some stage. So this is why I've evened it out, and it's a lot more of a lazy assessment than yours, Ollie. You've done the work, mate. You are the workhorse of the Sheffield United way. I'm going to keep going with that because that is the title that you deserve. But
and I like it.
I've certainly
that's fine.
I've certainly just looked at it in layman's terms, and I think they're both not great. I'd be more confident if it were Fulham at home, Palace away, because I think Palace have the slight edge. So I can see why you've gone for a Palace win, narrow Palace win, but I think they'll cancel each other out. And yeah, one apiece for me, I've gone for in this one.
No, I can see it. Certainly. I think it's going to be a tight game. I'm not overly committed to my stance. But like I say, when I saw those stats for Fulham, I just thought, you know what? It's probably not the worst idea to start getting against them just a little bit in some of these predictions. Speaking of teams to get against, I think we've got two of them in the next game. I don't know why I've predicted a winner because I'm not sure either of these teams are going to win anytime soon. But it's an interesting one for me. Luton at home, I do think they are going to cause teams lots and lots of problems. And Wolves are one of those teams who I think are going to be in a relegation battle and maybe just can't quite handle it. Where are you at on this one?
I don't know whether you've done me on this one, to be honest, because I don't think Luton aren't a great Premier League side. We're not a great Premier League side. We're in that bottom six, aren't we, in terms of but so are Wolves. I think Luton will see this as an absolute must-win game. Wolves come into their home ground. We know how difficult Luton can be to play against. But I think they're both poor, to be honest. I think we're better than both of these sides, if I'm honest. Wolves I'd give the slight edge to, but because it's away from home, I think that levels it out a little bit. So again, I don't like to do back-to-back same prediction because I've just gone for 1-1 in previous game, but I think they cancel each other out and it's a 1-1 this time.
No, to be honest, I don't think that's a bad prediction. I was looking at this. I think there's only one team so far this year that haven't scored against Wolves, and that was Everton. And that was a game where I think Jose Sarr had the game of his life. They conceded about 2 XG and still won 1-0. So certainly I agree. I don't think Wolves are anything special. I do think, oh God, it's jinxing though, isn't it, when we say it? If both of us say it, it's a jinx. So I'm not going to say it.
And they've got to win at some point, haven't they? Luton have got to get 3 points at some stage, as have United, obviously. But it's got to come at some point. And these sort of games, they will see as absolutely vital. So, yeah, it could go one or two ways, I think. I don't think Wolves are picking up the win, but I think one of us is going to be right.
No, I agree. I think one of us will be right. And I also think that Wolfgang is definitely going to be right and that this is going to be an absolute stinker to watch. I do not want to be in the comments.
Good shout from Wolfgang.
It's always appreciated as well that Shaz comes in and reminds us to do our bankers at some point later on today. We will come to them at the end of the video and we will make sure that we get them in because our memories do occasionally let us down. Just occasionally. So up next, we've got Man City versus Nottingham Forest. Ooh, I'll let you go first, Jimmy. Where are you going on this one? You think Forest will actually score a goal?
I do. I think they looked poor the other night against Burnley. But I think if you look at their players, they've always got a goal in them. And I think Awoniyi is decent up front, but bringing in Hudson-Odoi to complement Gibbs-White, there's always a goal in that side. It's a little bit like I think about United now. We're not going to dominate teams, but with Gus Hamer and Cameron Archer inside, I think there's always chance that we pop up with a goal. And McAtee obviously complements that. So 6-2. Wow. So I think City too good for everybody in this league without giving too much of a sort of default run out for Man City. They will win this, like I think we've predicted them to win every game so far and haven't been far off. But I think Forest have got a goal in them. So yeah, 3-1. 3-1 I've gone for. What's your thoughts?
No, I'm not against that. I was trying to find a way to put any kind of spin on this. Is there anything we can do that would be new or fresh. And at the end of the day, I went back and checked. Man City have won 19 in a row at the Etihad in all competitions. They've not lost in 32 since April 2022 against Liverpool. I mean, they're not a bad side. I don't think there's anything new to say. Let's just accept that City will likely win.
That's true. I think the only unwritten rule that we've got is we don't really tend to have City as banker, do we? Because it's one of those that I think is the most predictable result in the league. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what we've said.
Avoid City as the banker, and you've done me absolutely dirty there, Jim. I'm going to be honest with you, but that's fine. I will quickly reevaluate what I'm doing with my life for the rest of this video.
You didn't. Did
I not?
You didn't. No.
Did I message? Did I actually tell you what I was doing though?
Yeah, you did. You did, and it was City. Yeah, because I wouldn't have said that otherwise. If you want an easy cop out, then you can have City as your banker, mate. Don't you?
I want to know who my banker is now. I can't remember. I'm sure I'll figure it out as we go through. Jesus, you can tell we plan.
Yeah, I'll give you a subtle cough. I'll give you a subtle cough when it comes up. All right.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear. Nice. So up next, Brentford versus Everton. So, Jimmy, I'm going to come to you on this in a moment, but there's one stat that, as I've checked through everything today, it blew my mind and made me unbelievably angry. So far this season, Everton have created 7.6 XG and they've only scored 2 goals.
Well, I think that justifies my selection, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, it does. It's just, I can't... The 2 goals had to be at Bramall Lane, didn't they? They have all that bad luck. They create all the chances and the goals come at Bramall Lane. I mean...
It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. It's the way it falls for you. And that, I mean, there's 2 ways of looking at that. And I've talked about this myself on Ramble. But you can think United are getting better and better, which is the way we try to look at it. Every game we're improving, but it's just not falling for us. And if we keep going, it will. The other side of that coin is if luck keeps going against us, do heads drop. And that's the scary sort of tightrope we're walking at the minute. So you're right. Obviously, luck was massively... The only 2 goals they've scored out of their 7.6 XG is against us. But that's been a United fan, isn't it, mate? That's been a blame.
It is. You get used to it. But actually, it's fun checking that because obviously that's not a bad XG stat for Everton. And actually, in the underlying data metrics, they actually have better numbers than Brentford do. And so your prediction, though it looks, I think, on paper like a little bit of a shock, probably isn't going to be too far away. I think Everton will be a lot more competitive than maybe a lot of people think. But for me, this one was about Brentford at home. They have a fantastic record when they're able to be at the Brentford Community Stadium. And I think Everton's confidence, similar to what we've just said about United, when luck's not going your way, if your confidence turns, that can really affect you. And I think there's a risk that starts to happen to Everton.
Do you know what? I'm really starting to enjoy this as we dig a little bit deeper because what I think it's starting to evolve into a little bit, this me against you, Ollie, is Blades Ramble versus Sheffield United way, is you are more of the modern day scout in terms of data analysis. You will check the stats and make sure you're right. And you'll trust your eye as well. I know you can read the game just without the figures in front of you, but I am much more the other way and I will go on the old eye test and potentially use some figures to back me up sometimes, but obviously it's what I used to do as well. So I'm the old school sort of way of looking at it. And I saw I like watching the way these two have played. I don't like watching Everton, but obviously want them to lose. But it links in with what you're saying in terms of the underlying numbers because I think they've been playing okay. And I don't think they've been as bad as everybody's made out. They've obviously not scored, which is the highlight. It's a little bit like Sheffield United have only got 1 point, they're rubbish. Well, that's not the full story, is it? Everton scored twice in the league against us, but they're not as bad as everybody's making out. And I think, and I keep saying this about Brentford, I don't think they're going to struggle by any means, but I don't think they'll quite have the season that they've been having over the last couple of years because they've lost a couple of big hitters and not really replaced them. So, yeah, that's why I've picked for what you rightly say would be a bit of a shock result, but figures from your end and eyes from my end would say that that's not much of a shock in the end.
Indeed. No, I think you're right. And I think that's exactly it. So we'll see how that goes. But as you say, I'm sure we will definitely be rooting for Brentford as we could do with Everton maintaining being one of the 3 teams that stay below us in the league. There's obviously another team who look like they might finish below us. They're really struggling at the moment. And I'm, of course, talking about Manchester United. They're having a really bad run. They're brilliant. I think they'll win this game easily. Now that I've remembered what I've said previously, I think this is a really interesting one because for Man U, they are having a little bit of a panic at the minute. They've lost 3 in a row. They've conceded 10 through those games. Onana really doesn't look like he's settled into the season at all. But for me, against a newly promoted side, Burnley, I thought they did actually look all right in the end against Forest. I thought they'd started to come into it. They were unlucky not to get that win with the handball against Berger. But ultimately, I just don't really think they're good enough at the moment. I don't think they're capable of seeing out a game against a team like Man U. And we saw what Man U did to Forest. So even if Burnley start well, we know that Man U are going to come at you and they're going to come at you with a little bit of pressure. And I just don't think Burnley can stand up to that. And that's why I've gone for this confident Man U win. And that's why we'll be revisiting it later on. You're obviously a bit less confident, but still think Man U will get there?
Yeah, I don't think Man U have been in good form at all, to be honest. But Burnley, don't rate them. I think we're a better side than Burnley. And I say that quite confidently. And I'm never that confident with United normally, but I think companies come up with the complete wrong mentality of trying to take people on with inferior players, playing a brand of football that the players aren't really capable of at this level. They haven't strengthened to the degree. I think they were a stronger side last year than they are this year. I also think that there were. I agree with you in terms of they came into the game more, but I think against Forest. But I think Forest was so poor that's what sort of led to their building in confidence throughout the game. And obviously still got, it was harsh what happened to him with Sander, but if I said I weren't laughing about it, I'd be lying. So I think Man U will have the quality to overcome them, but I think, it's a tale of two sides in woeful form, and it might not be a great watch, if I'm honest.
No, I agree. I don't think it's one that I'll be sitting down to really enjoy on Saturday night, but I do think that Man U will be probably just too good for him. And surely they're going to have got a rocket after that midweek. You can't go away and concede 4. They'll try and defend a little bit better. And I do think they've got more than enough in them to punish Burnley. They got 3 against Bayern, as much as it wasn't a great performance yesterday. You've got to think they can do the same again. So let's go on to, we've got it in our title, probably the biggest game of the weekend. Arsenal Spurs, the North London derby. Oof, I've sat massively on the fence. So why do you think Arsenal are going to win it?
Because you put your predictions in first, and I'd already done about 3 1-1s. So I couldn't go 2-2. I can't really split them, if I'm honest. And home advantage was the only thing that I could do. I think Arsenal are a better. Well, I don't know that they're riding more of a wave overall, if you look at this slightly medium-term picture, but Spurs are in great form and obviously showed good resilience against us. Whatever you want to think about the refs and the time and everything else, they kept coming wave after wave and they kept going, that positive mentality. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Spurs pick something up here. But Arsenal at home are a formidable side and you expect them to be top 4 this year. So it'll be tough for Tottenham. So that's why I've just picked for an Arsenal win. But I think you're closer, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is a really tough one to call because, like you say, Spurs actually do look as though under Ange they've really started to play and that this is actually going to be a system and a manager that suits them after so long where they've been playing that turgid defensive football. But Arsenal, they did actually really come out to play last night in the Champions League. No, it was only against PSV, but that's still a really commanding performance in the Champions League when you've not been there for such a long time. But that in itself comes with a flaw for me in that they've not been in the Champions League for a while now. And now they've got to react again to playing midweek weekend. And with such a big game coming up, think it's really difficult. So I do think Arsenal will be the better team over the season, but I think it's really hard to split them at the moment. And I've been really impressed by Spurs, albeit that, they were a little bit lucky, weren't they, last week, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Massively.
Let's try and not be too bitter about it.
Where did 12 minutes come from?
Don't.
No, I can't. I can't get into it again. I can't.
We
Can't
can't.
go down that rabbit hole.
I can't do it, Jim. It'll finish me off.
No,
Right.
no.
So our favourite team, because to be honest, your Blades ramble, we're Sheffield United way. But to be honest, based on these prediction videos, I think we're all just Brighton fans, and we're all just
We are, mate.
masquerading as being United fans. Because I mean, we keep backing them, and we keep saying the sentence, "How do they continue to be so good?" I've just talked about Arsenal and the risk about Arsenal that they've gone back into the Champions League. They've done Europe and then they're playing at the weekend. So why have I gone for Brighton quite so strongly? Is because I think they're at the crest of a wave. I think through the season, that Europe weekend scale might start to affect Brighton. And I do think it's something that will weigh on their legs. But after how exciting your first game in Europe and the huge momentum that is going to come alongside that, I just think they'll really carry that on for this game in particular. And I just think they're just such a good side at the moment that it's hard not to back them.
I completely agree. I can't pull you on anything in terms of any slight disagreement there, because you're bang on with the riding the crest of a wave. The form that they're on at the minute is unreal. They've just turned off a Man U at Old Trafford. I know Man U are in poor form, but that any time that result is brilliant. Unless you've got Kean Bryan and Ollie Burke in your team, you've not much of a chance, have you? So that's the way you've got to look at it. But for me, I think you're right as well in terms of over the longevity of the season. Despite them having a very talented squad, it's not the biggest squad. So whether that will weigh on them a little bit and maybe see them miss out on a top 4 push, which I think the first team are capable of. I mean, they're in a much higher level but similar dilemma to United. So I believe our best 11 is good enough to survive if we can keep them fit. In terms of Brighton, I believe their best 11 is good enough for a top 4 challenge if they can keep the best 11 fit. So I prefer to have their problem, I'll be honest. But, we are where we are. So there we go.
No, and it's funny how Wolfgang brings this up, actually, because obviously you touched on it before. Brighton are one of the teams that will pass both of our tests. I'll check the numbers and they'll look fantastic. You'll watch them and they'll look brilliant. So I can understand why there's been such a Brighton loving as the season goes through. One team that we're not loving, though, not loving at all so far, is Chelsea. So I've given up on them. I said last week when we did this, they were playing Bournemouth, and I went, they're just going to turn it round. At some point, it's going to click for Chelsea. They're going to be brilliant. But you know what? I just don't think they're a top 6 team this year. I just don't think at the moment that they're playing at that level. And I think Villa are more likely to finish in that top 6 European spot than Chelsea are, if you asked me right now. They've got the second best XG in the league behind City. They've got 5 different players who've scored 2 or more goals, so they're spreading the goals throughout their team. So it's not like one injury is going to really disrupt them. I am worried about their defence. I know that they can be got at if they play such a high line, and teams do seem to keep getting in behind to punish them. But I got no confidence that Chelsea are the team to A, have the right game plan to do it, or B, that their players will then follow through on that. So I'm going quite strongly that I don't like Chelsea at the moment, and I think Villa will be a better team, and so they'll win this game.
I get that. It makes perfect sense. The only thing I counter with is I think Villa have been very streaky. So you never know what Villa's going to turn up. So they can either be, and obviously they've saved that during games as well. So they've been poor throughout and then a really strong last 10 minutes to turn it around and things like that. But they've been able to turn it on at times, and other times they just can't get going. So it very much depends on what Villa team turns up at Chelsea. I'm of the opinion that I agree with you in terms, I don't think this is a great Chelsea team, despite the money that they've spent, which is ridiculous. But I always find it so strange that because of the badge on the shirt, they find a performance from somewhere. But if you swapped every player in the club for a different club, then sometimes it wouldn't happen. Do you know? It's a really strange thing to explain, and I'm not doing it very well. But I think the fact that they are Chelsea players levels them up a little bit, which it shouldn't happen. And I don't know why it often happens, because if they were playing for Burnley and they were playing like this, then they get hammered. It'd be 0-3, 0-4. But because it's Chelsea, we always give them an outside chance because of the reputation of the club. So does that bear fruit? I don't know. I think they've got to turn it around at some point. Otherwise, they'll be looking for another new manager very shortly, won't they?
Yet another one. But no, I think you're
Yet
right. And I think
another.
there's really something in that sort of big club mentality, because we've seen, like you've seen Man U do it so many times when actually they've been rubbish and yet they just somehow find a way to win. It's a presence and an aura, isn't it? And you are right that Chelsea have got that.
I mean, Brighton and Man U would have been the perfect example last week. If Man U would have beaten Brighton, it would have been like expected to a degree, even though everybody recognised Brighton are a better football side than United at this minute.
Yep.
So if you'd have swapped the players, then I don't know. It's just a strange way I think about things sometimes, but it's the aura of the club, like you say. It gives them that extra 10% that, or is it the fear of playing those clubs for the opposition sometimes? So
I think it's the fear. It's like the Real Madrid on a Champions League night type scenario, isn't it? When you know you're better than them, like Man City did a few years ago, better than them for 180 minutes and lost.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? We know that a lot of the game is psychological, but it's weird how it can affect players at times. So yeah, interesting little tangent there, mate.
Yeah, a little bit of fun. Check us out. Getting into the hot topics. Speaking of big clubs who can just turn it on when they want, Liverpool against West Ham. Now, I have for some reason backed against Liverpool turning it on. And I think
don't get that.
It's a really difficult one because Liverpool have looked very good so far this season. They've got 11 goals in the last 4. They've barely conceded any, I don't think. So, we flagged up pre-season. Their defence was an issue. Their midfield was an issue. They seem to have solved those problems. But West Ham, we talked about them a little bit last week when they were playing Man City, and they are a very good team. They've leveled up from where they were last season. They upset Brighton, and they did give City a scare. They were winning at half-time last week. Yeah. They showed that they've got it in them to have a really high level of performance. And so if they turn up in the same way that they went to the Etihad last week, I do genuinely believe there's a chance that West Ham could get something from this game. And I actually am going to back them to do it because I think Liverpool need to do something to convince me that they're really at the level. I know they've looked good, but they've not had the most challenging fixtures. I think everybody recognised the Newcastle game was more of a Newcastle implosion, albeit that they'd stayed in the game really effectively. So I want to see them put in a statement performance before I think against those upper level teams that they'll beat them easily. So that's my slight doubt on Liverpool. At Anfield, you would expect them to win, but I just think there's a chance for West Ham. I had a gut feeling on it.
That's fair, mate, and always go where you go. I think there's usually something in that, but I think if this were at West Ham, then your scoreline might be closer than mine. But I do think Liverpool are that level above this year. They've improved where they needed to, as you've said. How many have they conceded in the last few games? Did you say?
Not many.
All right.
I've not got the exact number.
You put a number 8. Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out. I thought you put a number 8.
Not many.
Okay, right, cool. Because I don't know either.
I'll stand by it, mate. It's not many. If you want a specific figure, somebody will tell us in chat.
But you think that West Ham are going to turn up and score 2 against them, and I just don't see it. I don't see it. I think Liverpool, I'm not a massive Liverpool fan, and obviously I don't like West Ham very much. But obviously, I always think Liverpool have got it in the locker to get that extra 10, 15% out of the team. They're sort of they play with enthusiasm, and they at Anfield, they're very hard to turn over, as we know. So, yeah, I can't see anything else than a Liverpool win, I'm afraid, mate.
No, to be honest, I have to admit, I haven't put the Anfield factor into my prediction there. I saw 2 teams and I went, yeah, they'll draw 2-2. And I didn't even think about the fact that means that Liverpool are going to drop points at Anfield, which they never really do. But, back it all. Confidence.
Go for it,
eyes
mate.
Down, head down, eyes closed, can't lose. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So, last game of the weekend, and we come to the Bramall Lane factor. And this is where the home advantage really makes a difference to me. Because, look, we were so close last week. We know we don't want to get into it. We know we don't want to focus entirely on what's happened in the past. But we were so close. And we have continually got better throughout this season so far. We are a Jordan Pickford wonder save away from beating Everton at Bramall Lane. We are a 98th and 101st minute goal from Tottenham away from winning away at Tottenham. And if we were sat here on 5 points, on 7 points, we'd go, you know what? I think we deserve that. And I think that's a fair reflection of what we've done in the games we've played so far. So I do really feel as though there is a win coming for United. And Newcastle haven't been that convincing yet this season. They've had a really good draw midweek against Milan, But they spent that entire game under the cosh, relying on good defending, relying on big saves. And so United come into this with belief, and I do think we can win it. I do genuinely think that this is the one for us, and you clearly agree.
I do agree. I must admit, I don't know what I was thinking when I put this result down. I do think we're going to win.
No.
I do think we'll win. I think if I had my time again, I would say 2-0 United, because that's what I've been saying all week leading up. I'd obviously sent these results in prior, but I'm confident. Yeah, Ollie agrees. I think, yeah, with maybe score an early goal. They then try and pile it on us a little bit to get an equaliser, and we catch them on break again. That'd be lovely. We are due a win, mate. We are due. I don't think the stats will be very favourable. You might have a more of an idea of that, because we have been under the cosh a little bit. But
yeah,
we've defended resolutely, particularly against Tottenham. I think against Everton, it could have gone either way. We've really started turning up recently, and I'm confident it comes, and hopefully that's the catalyst for a turn in the tide. But we shall see. We can't underestimate them, and we won't. But I think it's coming for United, and I think our season properly kicks off this weekend. I'm excited.
No, I agree as well, and I'm excited too. We should give the other side, you referenced it a little bit there, Jimmy. We have been under the cosh a fair bit. I think Wes has made the most saves of any keeper in Europe, I think, so far in terms of that. But it's not exactly wonder saves. They've been relatively straightforward. We have given up quite a lot of XG. I think it might be the second highest XG conceded in the league. But I don't know what it is. It's not felt that way watching the games. And I think for me, this is where I've decided to turn off all of the stats analysis and go entirely with your system, Jimmy, because watching the games, I haven't felt like we've been under the cosh as much as that. We've defended resolutely. We've not given up huge chances. We're not seeing glaring misses or wonder saves. We are generally getting through games and being there or thereabouts and being really competitive. So, yeah, I think this is the weekend, and I think we really kick on after this one. It's a really tough fixture list, so it'd be very, very welcome as well to try and get this in the bag.
Me too, pal. Fingers crossed there.
Fingers crossed, eh? Right. So there we go. We've gone through them all. That's another week in the bag, Jimmy. How are you feeling?
Who's your bank?
Think your lead's going to lead?
Who's your banker?
Oh, God. I'm glad you know.
Shaz, I'm on him, Shaz. Oh,
Shaz, yeah, give all the credit to Jimmy. All the credit to Jimmy. So you go first, Jimmy. What is your banker for this week?
A little bit like on the theme when we were talking about it, I've gone for Brighton to beat Bournemouth as my banker. I think we said we can't speak highly enough of Brighton at the minute. Not just the way they run as a club, but the way they're playing at the minute, the way they can cycle players out of their club and produce somebody else that it doesn't really seem like they miss a beat. Unbelievable. And I know they've sunk a lot of money into it, but I can't see anything else but a Brighton win in this fixture. And I think it's one of the easier bankers to call.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfectly fair. As you coughed for me earlier, I've gone for Manchester United as my banker. Like I say, this is very much it. I think actually the reasons for this became clearer as we got further into the show, because you referenced it before. It's that kind of big club feel. Like Manchester United might be rubbish, but I still think they will turn up and win games like this because they are Manchester United. And that makes a huge difference. I think we will see it click for them as well at some point. Ten Hag got them working towards the end of last season. It's not started well, but I still think they've got it in them to turn it around. If Onana can just settle into the club a little bit more as well, that'll make a huge difference, because having a goalkeeper who actually makes saves, it turns out, helps you in a game of football. So, yeah, I'm going for Man U, and I'll be confident with them.
Good. And I hope you're right, mate, because obviously we don't want Burnley picking up any points. So,
indeed.
Yeah, happy with that.
There we go. This time, we've gone through it all, Jimmy, and that's another week in the bag.
Nice. Good stuff. Thanks, mate. I've enjoyed this.
Yes, me too. It's always a fun video. Thank you very much as well to everybody who has joined us. So if you want to play along and you want to get your predictions in, you want me to maybe be shouting you out next week for having a fantastic week, put them in the comments of the YouTube video that we've got. And Shazbat will be able to go through. She'll collate all your scores, and then I might be giving you a shout out. So thank you very much for joining me, Jimmy.
No problem, mate. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Anytime. And I think both of us later this evening have got some Newcastle previews that we're doing as well. I'm going on Newcastle at 8 o'clock. I think you're on at 9. So if you follow
I'm
us
on to 9.
on Twitter,
I am indeed.
you'll be able to find us out, and you'll be able to go in and watch those streams to see if we are still confident that United will win on a Newcastle channel instead of a Sheffield United one.
We'll see.
Indeed. Right. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Hope you all go well.
Cheers, guys.